you're right. I'm thinking of the vocal bit. Yeah, let's just put a speed. Yeah, let's see. All right. Anyway, see the boxes in after.
That's how people that created that area.
Got a little card with me?
Okay, that was all the guy in that.
Live stream. Right? Are you still buzzing? Oh yeah, wow, I give you credit. Come on. Nope, go ahead.
Actually, no, let me cut back.
What happened to the house up there? One more minute.
Is she a senior citizen? And your partner, was she still working? Or she was well, good. You guys are out waiting. Oh, okay. Oh, fabulous. Yeah.
Nope, you're fine.
Well, I thought he was married, but from years ago.
I talked to this
You're gonna follow me around. Aloha. Good evening. Oh, wow. I hope that's the shape of good things to come and a good evening here. This is my fifth of 6 talk stories this week, and I've gotten applause at the end, but never at the beginning. So this is a really good sign. Thank you so much for joining me and my staff in my office on a beautiful Friday evening in beautiful Honolulu. I think we all realize we're in one of the best places in the world right here, and I really appreciate your spending the time with me tonight. And I also want to say aloha to everybody that's watching us on Facebook Live here, because I am trying to get this out to a lot of people across my district. And welcome to your Congress, because this is your Congress. I am Ed Case, and I am your Congressman, bringing Congress to you. I represent Hawaii's 1st Congressional District. The 1st Congressional District is one of 2 congressional districts here in Hawaii, and I represent the district that is really urban Honolulu, Honolulu proper, which runs from Makapu'u Point on the east all the way through this side of the Ko'olau, all the way out Pearl City, Aiea, Waipahu, up to really just the edge of Wahiawa. So I have all of Mililani, Mauka, and up to Wakiawa, then back down through Ewa out to the edge of Kapolei. So that is my district. The 2nd Congressional District is the rest of the state. And in my district, I represent 710,000 residents of Oahu, and on any given day, 100 to 200,000 extra people in our district here. Oh, and we ought to recognize my brand new constituent, my newest constituent, who was born just a few hours ago. Ka'imi, the Hawaiian monk seal, gave birth to her 5th pup at Kaimana Beach this afternoon. So welcome to Ka'imi's pup. I really appreciate representing Ka'imi's pup as well. I live here. This is my home. It has been throughout my entire life. But in my current job, I work 6 months a year plus in Washington, D.C. In fact, if you add up all of the time that I spend in any one year, I probably spend 7, even up to 8 months a year in D.C., somewhere else in the world, or on a flight, and about 4 maybe 5 months if I'm lucky here. And it is very, very easy under that circumstance to fall out of touch with your constituency. Washington, D.C. is 5,000 miles away from here, a 5th of the way around the world. It is a different world. It is a different culture. It thinks differently. It acts differently. It doesn't necessarily understand us out here in the Pacific, out here in Hawaii. And therefore, since I am there, and that's where my job is, it is really, really critical to me and to the functioning of my office and my own duties that I stay in touch with you. And I try to stay in touch with you in many, many different ways, as many ways as I possibly can. One way is by just simple newsletters, just sending a newsletter to your house a couple of times a year. A couple of you have shown me that, so I'm glad you're getting it. I also send out an e-newsletter about once every 3 weeks to a month to 5 weeks, somewhere in that range. Please sign up for my e-newsletter, which you can do at mail.house.gov, which I'll say a few times here tonight. I also, through my e-newsletter, often do an online survey. I just did an online survey, as a matter of fact, to ask you that got my e-newsletter, what your priorities were. I asked you very specific questions about some of the issues I'm facing, for example, Ukraine and China. Please use that. I meet very frequently with my constituents, you, individually or through the groups that you are members of in both Washington, D.C. and here in Honolulu. In D.C., please come and visit my office if you're in D.C. or around D.C. I love having you there. We'll try to show you around. A couple of you already have told me you appreciated a tour of the Capitol that we provided. And then when I'm home, which is, a district work period is what we call it, since it's not a recess, that implies you're kind of in the sandbox cruising. And we do anything but that when we're home. I try to get out as much as I can to interact with my community wherever I can. And then finally, I do community meetings like this. Now, before COVID came along, I would do frequent talk stories. And the fact of the matter is COVID interrupted that. And so this is my first full week of having personal talk stories in 3 years. During those 3 years, I hope I did keep in touch. I ran about 48 virtual town meetings, talk stories, roundtables, Facebook Lives, trying to stay in touch any which way I could. But there is really nothing that replaces this for me. This is democracy at its purest. This is me reporting to you as your congressman. This is you telling me what you think, telling me what you think I did right or wrong, and giving me your thoughts so that I can absorb all of that into this job that I have. And so what we're going to do here tonight is pretty straightforward. I'm going to talk for 20, 30 minutes to just give you my report. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can just come right up here and say what you want, ask your question, whatever it is, and I'll try to respond. If I can respond now, I will. If I can't, then we'll figure out a way to respond to you or help you out. I am not alone in this effort. I am helped by a great staff, both here and in Washington, D.C., who are professionals, many of whom you personally are already in touch with directly. But I've got about 5 or 6 of them here tonight. So this gentleman over here standing up is Tim Nelson, who is my chief of staff. Tim is from Washington, D.C. He runs my whole show. Tim has been in and... That's the first applause Tim has gotten all week as well. You don't have to applaud every single one of my staff unless you really want to. So I should say hold your applause until the end, actually after the end. But so Tim has been in and around Congress for about 25 years now. He actually started with Patsy Mink and then worked for me in my first incarnation in Congress, 02 to 07, representing the 2nd Congressional District. I don't think Jackie is here, is she? Okay, Jackie Conan is my Deputy Chief of Staff, who has been at all of our talk stories this week, but is not at this one. She may be along later on. Nestor Garcia here is my Communications Director out of my D.C. office. Oh, wow, Nestor got an applause. Nestor and I started in the state legislature together many, many years ago, and then Nestor went on to the city council and has a long and illustrious career in TV reporting. We also have Anika Nozaki, who is somewhere around. There's Anika right over there. Anika is out of my D.C. office, but hails from Mililani. Kira Empting is somewhere around, right? Kira is right here. Kira is also from Mililani, and She is in my Honolulu office. She helps with casework, and we'll get into what casework is. And then finally, Johnson Pham is right back there. Johnson is also in my Honolulu office working on casework there. And I have many, many state and county government partners who are really critical to my job, and I'll try to get into that as we get along. And I invited your state and county government representatives to join us here tonight. In all of my talk stories, we've had a couple. Here I see Carol Fukunaga. Thank you so much, Carol, for joining us. I don't know if there's any others. I don't recognize anybody. Apologies. Any other elected officials here? How about neighborhood board? If you're from the neighborhood boards, stand up. Any neighborhood board members? I want to recognize you if you're here, because I believe in the neighborhood boards. Okay. Thank you so much. So that's the lineup of what we're gonna do tonight, and a little bit of an overview. I think it's a good idea to start with my mission. Every organization, every person needs to know where they're going, and needs to know where they want to get to, and needs to know how you get there. And so, what is your mission? My mission is threefold. I have three separate parts to my mission. As a United States representative representing you. Part one, what our Constitution says my mission is, which is to represent my district in our United States Congress in the great issues of the day for our country, and given our country's role in the world, for our world. And so these are my obligation to debate, to decide, and to vote in this great democracy on all manner of issues. And these issues are anywhere from, again, what to do about China, what to do about Russia, what to do about Ukraine, how to save Social Security, how to protect our world's oceans, how to allocate funding between our military and our non-military, a topical issue if for sure. These are issues and decisions that I have to make regardless of whether I'm from Hawaii or Idaho or anywhere else. And these are countrywide responsibilities. That's mission number one. Mission number two is about Hawaii. How do I help Hawaii from the federal government perspective? We've got a big old federal government, and our federal government has many areas where it interacts with all of us in Hawaii individually or as a state. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but it can always be improved. And so my job is really to figure out exactly how I can assure that our federal government is maximizing its support, its assistance to us here in Hawaii. And I do that through a variety of means, but my major means, which I'll get into, is the Appropriations Committee, which is basically federal funding. And then finally, third part of my mission, to help you with your issues. Now, every single one of us has some interaction with our federal government, whether we like it or not. We pay taxes, we get Social Security benefits, or we hope to get Social Security benefits. We are veterans and get veterans benefits. We have immigration issues. We have a variety of issues that are really run and administered by the federal government. And for the most part, I hope and believe that works pretty well. But oftentimes, people can't get answers on their issues. People cannot get satisfaction on the decisions that the federal government has made, and they simply need somebody that knows what's going on in our federal government to help. And we want to help you with those issues, especially for the federal government. If you don't know whether it's federal or state or local, don't worry about it. Ask us. We'll let you know. If it's state or local, we'll get you over to the right state or local agency. If it's federal, we'll take it and try to solve it for you. We call that casework because we actually do open a case and we try to solve it and we report back to you. And I know that some of you have casework issues here, and my staff and I are here and will stay afterwards so that you can get into our system and we can start helping you with those particular cases. Okay, so that's my three parts of my mission. Now, how do I actually carry out my mission? What are the tools of my trade, so to speak? Well, first of all, of course, I can't carry out this mission without staying in touch with you, and we've already talked about that. And we have a variety of ways that we do try to stay in touch. I'll reinforce them all the way through because a major part of this talk story is just getting you into the thought process that if you want or need help or need to say something to me as your congressman as to the issues of our day, please do that. Also, we communicate with you frequently. I mean, many people out there, tens of thousands a year in my district will email me what you think, will mail me the old-fashioned way, will tell me what you think in a forum like this, and I try to respond to all of those. So I've got a constant flow of communication to try to stay in touch. I talked about my staff. I have a full office in D.C., which I've already talked about, which is in the United States Capitol. And I also have a physical office here in Honolulu, which is downtown, which you are welcome to come and visit us at if you need some help. The information is on the handout that I gave you. I try to get my job done through my committees in Congress. Congress, like our state legislature, like our city council, organizes ourselves by committees. So these are smaller groups of members who come together to focus on a particular area. So we have, for example, a committee on education, a committee on foreign affairs, a committee on armed services, a committee on natural resources. And with all of these committees, we cover the entirety of the federal government. I'm on two committees. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, which is responsible, as it sounds, for taking care and administering our natural resources throughout our country. All of our public lands throughout our country, our national parks, our national forests, our national wildlife areas, et cetera, et cetera. Federal lands are huge in much of our country, and there are difficult decisions to be made about how we actually use them. That particular committee is also responsible for Native Hawaiians. And I pay very close attention to Native Hawaiian issues since I represent more Native Hawaiians in my district than any other district in the entire country. And it's got a couple of other areas that are very important to us here in Hawaii, but also to our country. But clearly, the most important committee that I serve on is the Appropriations Committee. So none of these other committees fund the government. They don't independently fund their programs. They set them up, they pass them, they administer them, they oversee them, but they don't fund them. We channel all funding through appropriations. And so you can imagine that that's a pretty well coveted committee, and it is a committee from which you can make a lot of difference if you know what you're doing. And I was really lucky to get appointed to appropriations in 2019. I'm in my 5th year on appropriations, so I'm starting to build up a little bit of seniority on that committee. I just got appointed to 2 subcommittees on appropriations, both of which are directly relevant to Hawaii. The first is the Subcommittee on Defense, which oversees and funds all of our defense programs across our country, the largest subcommittee, and also the Subcommittee on Homeland Security, which touches us in a lot of different ways, from law enforcement, which I'll talk a little bit about, to immigration and customs, to the Coast Guard, and on. So I've got great committees and great subcommittees, and they allow me to try to achieve my mission goals. I serve on caucuses in Congress. Caucuses are each caucus is a collection of members who may or may not agree on other issues, but they come together for a specific purpose. So, for example, think the caucus on the U.S.-Philippines caucus. Now, I've been on that caucus throughout my entirety of my time in Congress. Why? Because I care a lot about the relationship with the Philippines, not only as a matter of the Asia Pacific, but for our Filipino Americans who live here, and I represent more Filipino Americans than any other district in the entire country. So I ought to care about the Philippines, and I serve on that caucus as a way of advancing my goals there. I'm also a member of another caucus, so that's one example. I am a member and a founder, actually, a co-founder and co-chair of the Pacific Islands Caucus, which is a collection of us that have come together to try to focus on our country's relationship with our ohana around the Pacific. This is, of course, a critical time for the Pacific as we look to the geopolitical challenge of China, as we look to many different needs of our international partners throughout the Indo-Pacific. And so this caucus, which has grown very rapidly, now has started to play quite a role in terms of our country's policy And that helps us here helps us here in Hawaii because we are such a center of the Pacific. We are such kind of the unofficial capital of the Pacific, if I can put it that way, that as our country orients ourselves to the Pacific, Hawaii's role is enhanced. Hawaii's prestige, credibility is enhanced, and of course that's also an economic driver for us here. So I focus on that caucus. I'm a member of a very interesting caucus that I think is very relevant to our Congress and our country today. Actually, I'm now the vice chair of that caucus. It's a 64-member caucus, and it's called the Problem Solvers Caucus. And this is a fascinating caucus, which is by rule half Republican, half Democrat. And it's pretty simple. We try to get out of the noise machine. We try to get out of the TV news in the morning or wherever you get your divisive, polarizing news from nowadays. And we try to have a dialogue. And we try to see whether we can come to some agreement. Now, hey, we are still Democrats and Republicans. We still have our definite beliefs. We still have major areas that we disagree on. But we've decided that we want to see whether we can actually systematically solve some of our nation's toughest problems. So think about the bipartisan infrastructure package, which I'll talk about. We had our hands in that last Congress and actually got that one done. We are working right now on our national debt, our national deficit, our debt ceiling, a very tough issue. We will be working in immigration reform, a very tough issue. We have gotten into other very, very difficult issues, like the I'm supposed to be speaking louder, but I'm yelling into this pretty loud. Can you hear me on the way back? If you can't hear me, please come up. And so this caucus is I think, a critical one to try to break through some of that dysfunction in Congress, and I'm happy to talk about it more. I work with my congressional colleagues. I'm one of only 2 members of the U.S. House from Hawaii out of 441. So if I'm not working with my colleagues, Hawaii is just going to drop off the map. And I work very consciously with my colleagues on all manner of things to develop relationships, to develop working relationships, so that I try to help them, and I hope that they will help me if the time comes. That was largely why we got not me only, but certainly it was a contributing factor that we got significant appropriations to close Red Hill, because our colleagues trusted us, and by us I mean the congressional delegation, that when we asked for this money on a very short basis, because it was an emergency, that they were going to appropriate that money in a very unusual way. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we had not had those pre-developed relationships with our colleagues. I also work, of course, with the president and the administration, because there's 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. And the executive branch executes our laws. So I pass the laws. They execute. So, it's not as simple as you pass a law and all of a sudden automatically it shows up at your doorstep in Honolulu. You've got to go through putting that program together, answering a bunch of questions, developing regulations, facilitating the program recipients here, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important that I have those relationships with the executive branch, and hopefully I do. And then finally, I'm just going to mention my state and county government partners and community partners, because they're really, really critical. That's why I spend so much time in outreach when I'm in DC and here, because I want to know what they're thinking. They're closer to you every single day on a day-to-day basis than I am. So think about it as a little bit of an early warning system of sorts, but also because many of our problems are not just federal, not just state, not just local. You actually have to line everybody up to get the job done. Housing and homelessness would be a perfect example of that. No one branch of government is going to be able to pull that off. So each of these tools helps me with a part of my mission, and I try to focus on all of those tools every day on all of those parts of the mission on a lot of different issues. Speaking of issues, let me report on some. And of course, this is a complicated time for our country, our world, for our Hawaii, for that matter, amidst a lot of polarization and division. And there are many, many difficult issues. I've already talked about a number of them. I've talked about China and Ukraine, Social Security and Medicare. environment and climate change, social safety nets, education. We could go on and on. You probably have the one that you believe is the most important. And I wish I could talk about every one of them right here, but we don't have time, and I want to get to your questions. And so what I'm going to do is just talk about 4 that are top of mind to me and I think to you, and then I'll turn this over to you. So number 1, inflation, cost of living. A crippling, pervasive, invidious, if you want to put it that way, economic condition that we've learned the hard way. When inflation takes over, it's really, really hard to get rid of it. And so you don't want to go there to start with, but when you get there, it ain't no easy fix. You can't like snap a silver bullet and inflation goes away. And when we look at what happened with inflation this time around, which is, the worst inflation in quite a while, we can look back and actually see what happened. Functionally, what happened, I'm talking nationally now, and internationally, because every part of our world has and had a version of inflation over the last couple of years. Some for reasons that are slightly different, but everybody had inflation. And everybody's trying to work their way out of it right now. But basically what happened was that during COVID, we, the federal government, flushed a lot of money out there into the economy to save it, to save our economy, to save our communities, to basically save our country, I guess you could say. And we spent trillions of dollars. And so that money all went out there, all the way around communities. It went to state governments, it went to businesses, it went to individuals. And that was not all spent. So A, there was a lot of money out there. B, it was saved up because we weren't spending it all during COVID. And COVID also caused a severe disruption in supply chains around the world, which are actually quite interdependent and fragile, if you want to think about it. They can be disrupted pretty easily. So we start coming out of COVID, we've got a lot of money out there, we've got disrupted supply chains, and all of a sudden we have a lot of demand for fewer supplies. And that causes prices to go up. And that's what happened. Now, what do you do about that? We can sit here and moan about it, and yeah, it has been terrible for many, many families with food, housing, healthcare, etc. And by the way, it's compounded here in Hawaii by some local conditions. For example, the cost of shipping from the mainland, which I can get into if you'd like. Little pet peeve of mine along the way. But how do we get out of it? Well, I think obviously there's a couple of things that we need to do and are doing. First of all, we have to very carefully control the actual overall supply of money out there to make sure we don't compound this problem all over again. And that's what we've been seeing with the Federal Reserve increasing interest rates. That's always a very, very difficult thing to do, but it is one of the only things that's been proven to work with inflation is to control the money supply. But we also have to open up those supply chains, which we have been doing over the last 1.5 to 2 years. We are starting to see it get better. 2 months ago, year-on-year national inflation, so from that point, looking back a year, was about 7%. 2 weeks ago it was 6%. 2 days ago it was 5%. And so we are heading in the right direction. And here in Hawaii, overall, notwithstanding the cost of groceries, which are outrageous on many levels for some very specific reasons, depending on what product you want to talk about. We project inflation at about 3.1, 3.2%. Not me, but the state people. And so that's better than it was, but not as good as it was a couple of years ago. So we're going to have to stay the course on this. I wish there was a silver bullet. I could say, 2 weeks from now, Congress will pass this beautiful bill and we'll snap our fingers and it'll go away. No, we have to stay a course on inflation, and I hope and believe that we will come through this in the next year. And I don't think in a year, if we do this right, that we will all still be ranking this up at the very top of our priority list. Crime, and especially guns throughout our country. Incredibly tragic crimes out there, especially gun violence throughout our country. We have seen an increase in overall crime across our country, an alarming increase. Here in Hawaii, we still do have some of the lowest crime rates in the country, especially violent crime. We're down at about the bottom 10 or right around 10 or something like that. Property crime is a little higher. We've always had that. We've always had a little bit higher property crime and a little lower violent crime, including gun violence in this state. Nonetheless, it is up here, and we're all feeling that. So the perception that we all have, the correct perception, is it's not as safe as it was. We've had horrific crimes that we've seen just in the last couple of weeks, and so this is a critical issue for us all to face right now. My job, from the federal perspective, is twofold. Number one, we do have federal agencies that directly contribute to crime and law enforcement, crime prevention and crime, consequences, and to law enforcement across our country. The FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, cyber crime, which everybody should be worried about. And I try very hard to fund those programs. I just met with the head of the FBI here along these lines 2 days ago to walk through, okay, what exactly do we need to be doing? But they need funding, and sometimes it's very unique in Hawaii, as I already talked about. And so I try to fund our federal folks and make sure that they're working. But also, we have major federal programs that do help our state and local partners. So I try to boost that funding up so that they have the tools they need, because virtually all of our law enforcement is down at the state and local level. We don't have a whole bunch of direct federal enforcement except for federal crimes. And so what I try to do is to make sure that HPD has the tools, communities have the tools that they need to deal with recidivism, keep people out of crime situations to start with. So that's where I kind of enter into that picture, and we've been successful in raising those amounts. Let me say a word about gun violence. Incredible tragedies, Louisville just a few days ago, Nashville, and on and on. An epidemic of violence, a health epidemic, a declared health epidemic, in addition to just a gun and violence epidemic. Embarrassing in the eyes of the world. We have some of the highest gun violence rates in the entire world. And look, I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that people, responsible people should be able to, own and utilize responsible weapons in responsible ways. But I don't believe in an unlimited right that gives somebody that clearly has problem indicators to own an assault rifle or a bump stock ammunition thing that has a very high capacity that is designed to take out a lot of people in a very short period of time. And I don't think we can avoid that consequence. And so I am one of those that believes in responsible nationwide firearms regulation that does preserve the Second Amendment rights, but does honestly account for what we're seeing in our society today. And I sincerely hope that this is one area where Congress eventually can come together and pass these laws. Less of an issue here, but not no issue here, because the same influences are with us here. And so we can't be complacent about this, and we can't be complacent about gun laws at the state level that have, I think, stood us in good stead for decades now. Red Hill. I know many of you are interested in Red Hill, and it's something that has been dominating my world for the better part of 4 years, but especially the last year and a half, especially since early 2021 and the first leak, and then again, critically, the leak in November of 2021. And my mission is pretty simple right now. My mission is to assure that the Secretary of Defense, who we, the congressional delegation, with you and others at the state and local level and communities, agreed to defuel and close Red Hill as safely and as expeditiously as possible. And my mission is to make sure that that happens. And I'm doing that a couple of different ways. First of all, appropriations. We have been able to appropriate $2.1 billion to this effort, which is a lot of money. Not just to defueling and closing Red Hill, but to assuring that the water supply is safe, that we have alternative sources of water. We have persistent and concerning healthcare impacts from exposure to Red Hill during the November-December timeframe that we have to account for. We don't know what the extent of those are. We're trying to get to the bottom of that. So that money is critical. And I'm also trying to oversee and ask the constant questions. I was in Red Hill last week with the leadership of the defense Red Hill effort, and some of my colleagues, by the way, which is educating them on Red Hill, to make sure that they are doing what we expect them to do, to stick to the plan, which is a plan under which they are trying to fix the Red Hill pipes so that the fuel can move through them safely. You've probably heard it on TV or elsewhere, about 300 checklist items that they've got to complete before they can do that. They're through about 150 at this point. Their timing is to commence defueling somewhere around early next year, January, and to complete defueling around June of next year. And I think that that's realistic. Things have to continue to fall in place for that to happen, but we, I think, can achieve that. So this is constant attention, constant oversight. Number 4, I want to talk to you about some success stories since I've been a little, perhaps not so encouraging here. Last year, Congress did some remarkable work on a bipartisan basis to pass 2 generational laws that are designed to fix our nation's infrastructure, or at least upgrade it. We call these laws the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. And these are laws that authorize trillions of dollars to be dedicated to upgrading our roads, our bridges, our sewers, our airports, our ports, our broadband, our schools in some cases, to really get us up to speed as compared to the rest of the world. And these are good, solid laws. And the Inflation Reduction Act goes after climate change more, it really goes after areas such as converting our energy transmission and grids and systems to renewable as opposed to fossil fuel, to getting us over that hump finally. And it also goes to areas that are particularly relevant to us here, such as coastal resilience, where we see roads falling into the ocean. What do you do about that? We see areas flooding like Ibilay. What do you do about that? How do we handle those areas? And so these laws are out there, but they're not going to, they are truly generational. And if we do our work right, and we all work together, there are billions of dollars for Hawaii to supplement what we already have to do this job. So much of my work right now is to make sure that those laws roll down from our federal government to our Hawaii, and that my state and local government partners know that they're there and can go chase that money with me. And so that's going to be a huge part of my job for as long as I'm in Congress, because these laws are going to have an impact on funding over the course of 5 to 10 years, somewhere in that range. At case.house.gov, there's a page that talks about these laws if you really want to get into that. And speaking of which, those are my 4 issues that I just wanted to cover with you. I now want to talk, in wrapping my part of this up, about resources for you to stay in touch with me, for you to get information about me, for you to get information that you want, for you to get the aid that you need, whether it's about my national mission or my mission to help Hawaii or my mission to help you with your individual concerns. So number 1, my website, case.house.gov. Please go check it out. I would love a peer-reviewed comment from you all on my website. We try to get the information out there. There is information on how to get in touch. There's information on my activities. My votes are all there on an up-to-date basis. So if you want to know how I voted on something, you can go there. I do my e-newsletters. They're there. I also do Olelo shows once a month, where I take a subject and report back to you on community TV, and those shows are all there. So there's a lot there. Please sign up for my e-newsletter. That's the easiest way for me to contact you about what I'm up to. And like I said, I send it out about once a month. Sometimes I don't, I try to do it when I have something important to say. Sometimes that's once every 2 weeks, or sometimes that's a little longer, but whatever it is, it's a regular way for you to stay on top of what I'm doing. Communication and contact. I welcome your communications. I welcome your contact. The information is on my website. This brochure that I handed out gives you some sense of some of the individual constituent services that I do provide, and this brochure also gives you all of my contact information as well as a reference to my website. And then finally, as I said earlier, my staff is here, and so especially if you have individual concerns, and some of you do, and came here to ask me how I might be able to help you with those individual issues. Some of you mentioned immigration. Some of you mentioned some other areas. Please get with my staff up there at the front so that we can make sure that we have the contact with you and follow up with you. Okay, that's my quick report. I really appreciate your considering me for, how long was that? That was a little longer than I hoped, so sorry about that. Time for your questions and comments. Please come up to the microphone here so everybody can help you. I think the only thing I would ask you for is there's a lot of people here, and every one of my talk stories so far, we've run out of time at 8 o'clock. So if you could please just be really concise in what you want to say, and we can get as many people accommodated as possible. And again, if it's something that takes a little bit longer for you to express or for me to answer, we'll take you offline and try to solve it outside, the direct dialogue here. Okay, go for it.
Thank you for your representation. I am Carol Litt. I would like to have you consider stopping the Federal Department of Taxation charging those over 50 years old to pay a self-employment tax unless they earn $50,000 per year or more. I've been struggling to pay for myself. I do part-time babysitting, and I have to pay 15.3% self-employment tax. You would have more compliance rather than paid off the books in cash. If you made this happen, the payment of self-employment tax goes to Social Security, Medicare. I already received them both, but I won't get any more benefits based on these additional payments that I'm required to pay on the small amounts I earn with a part-time job. The part-time job is babysitting. I am providing a service that allows a woman to work at home and provide for her family. She needs to have the child care in order to do her job. Why do I feel there is so much underrepresentation of women and their needs? I was a stay-at-home mom for over 15 years, and although I was highly compensated when I was an earner, I didn't get the credit for the time I cared for my children, and therefore I have much less Social Security benefits. I live in subsidized housing down the street. I just want you to hear my request for some relief. Here's my contact information. And I'm also just going to add, my first mortgage was 15.75% in 1979. We're all here. We all survived inflation. I don't want to get overly crazy about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carol. I really, first of all, I just really appreciate you sharing that. You obviously did it with a lot of emotion, and you're obviously struggling. And I hope I heard you loud and clear. I believe I did. first of all, I will say, not just to you, but to anybody else, that I hope and believe that we do try to subsidize childcare where we can, both at the federal and the state and local level. That's unfinished business right now, as you know. Number one, to try to increase the income and capacity for folks like you that are taking care of our Kiki. And I used people, you know, I hired people like you to help me raise my kids, and so personal experience, and I've always been appreciative to them for that. I think that we need to take a larger look at Social Security because as it is right now, and I'm not trying to spook anybody because there's plenty of people trying to spook you on Social Security right now. But if we stay on the path that we're on, we are going to be in trouble pretty soon. And so we have to make some changes let me just finish, with Social Security. Not that it will affect you, but as we make those changes, what I believe we need to do is to take a look at the self-employment tax on a much more progressive basis so that those that are not making as much are not paying the same rate. And I think we need to readjust the distribution of benefits so that those that don't need them as much when they are retired or taking Social Security really defer to those that need them far more. So in other words, to close that gap a lot more. So we've got a lot of things that we can do with Social Security.
My comment, just to reply to you and then I'll finish, is that we will have many more healthy, wonderful children that can support the elders if we have good child care.
Yeah. Right.
So if we support child care, I'm working with children that are struggling because their parents are stressed. The parents are freaking out, and I am there as what I call a parenting doula. I'm not just a babysitter. I support the parents. I tell them what they're going through is normal and healthy. I support the children. I allow them to express their emotions. We are going to have healthier children if we have better child care. We, the elders, at 70, 80, and even maybe into our 90s, we can do that. But you need to support us. We are available. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, and I agree with you. Hi.
Good evening. I come here in the interest of the opioid crisis, but being on the side of being a chronic pain patient, what it has done to us. I want to thank you very much for having your live event on this issue, because Heather Lusk from the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center saved my life last year by getting me hooked up with somebody who would resume my prescription for opioids that I had had for over 25 years. And Kaiser cut me off because of the drug politics. So I would like to first talk about the history of the drug politics. I'll go very quickly. The original making marijuana and opioids came in the early 1900s, making it illegal. These were racially based laws. We're still stuck in this mindset of this being a racially based law. A lot of people say that marijuana is a gateway drug. However, the statistics and the truth is that alcohol is the #1 gateway drug. Alcohol deaths annually are around 140,000 people a year. The opioid crisis, which took a huge ramp up in 2016 when the CDC changed their guidelines, the opioid deaths in 2016, according to the National Institute of Health, was around 42,000. All this drug clamping down on the drug wars has increased it by almost doubling it in the last 5 years. Now there's around 80,000 opioid deaths, but that's still nothing compared to alcohol. Now, alcohol prohibition hasn't worked. Marijuana prohibition isn't going to work. And marijuana is actually a very useful drug for people who do have pain conditions. So my question is, what are you doing to make marijuana out of the Schedule I drugs? Because that was the entire reason that I got cut off from my opioids, because I also have a medical marijuana license. So that's what I'd like to know.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I'm really happy you listened to my roundtable on fentanyl. That's what we were talking about. But it was obviously about opioids overall and drug policy in our country overall. And Heather Lusk was amazing on that show and is amazing from the Harm Reduction Association. Does great work. So I want to, number one, acknowledge everything that you said, which I agree with in principle, pretty much everything you said. It's very hard to get drug policy right. It's always such a gray area. But let me answer your direct question, because I'm going to answer you and then we've got some other people behind you. So I do not believe that marijuana should be a Schedule I drug. And to clarify for everybody that anybody that doesn't know all of this, so our federal government classifies drugs by various schedule based, in so many words, on how dangerous they are. And Schedule I is a dangerous drug. And marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug. The consequence of it being classified as a Schedule I drug is not about federal marijuana laws, which there are very few, if any, because each state at this point is making a decision as to how they want to treat marijuana. Some states have decriminalized it altogether. Some states like Hawaii have effectively decriminalized it and also provided it to be outright permissible for medical purposes. And some states haven't gone there. And I believe each state should be able to make this call. So I think this is a state decision. But the Schedule I classification prevents those states and the people in those states from the full range of activities to deliver what is legal in that state. And so, for example, you have the interesting situation where, because marijuana is a Schedule I drug, it gets anything that has to do with financing the legal growing and distribution of marijuana becomes very problematic for banks. Banks can't give their customers, a legal medical marijuana grower, the ability to go out there and finance on regular terms. And so you have this really weird stuff going on where they're walking around with piles of cash going down to pay their bills. Well, we don't want that. So your direct answer to your question is, I don't think that marijuana should be a Schedule I drug.
But my question was, what are you I thought
I have advocated, I have
it?
voted in Congress to take marijuana off of the Schedule I, and I've written letters to that effect to the administration. They haven't done it yet, but that's what I've done.
Okay, well, I also think that it would help serve your priorities. Less crime, make it legal, inflation, have more businesses, and it fits in all of these things.
Yeah.
And
thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Louis Garcia.
Little closer.
Yeah, my name is Louis Garcia. I moved to Hawaii in 2001 after teaching at a university for 25 years. 2010, I wanted to live a different life, so I moved to Mexico. After 4 years, I met a wonderful girl, and we've been together for 6 years. We wanted to come back to Honolulu to live, so we have petitioned for an I-129F visa.
Nice and close.
It has now been over a year, and we have not heard anything. She actually lived in Illinois for 10 years, going to graduate school, and had a son who wanted to return to the United States. So about 10 months ago, we decided to move, and I brought him with me. He's 15 years old. He's going to McKinley High School. We have still not heard anything about our visa. It has been going on to the 13 months.
Okay.
And I just need some help
Yeah.
to expedite this.
We will ask, I think we're already working with you, right?
I have asked the
I
federal
think
office.
what we did was to ask the status of the visa application.
Yes.
And I don't know where that actually stands. So we can at least do that. I will tell you, and this is not going to be a satisfactory answer for you. Our immigration system is seriously broken. Our visa processing system is seriously bogged down. A year is not unusual to be waiting for an answer, and I hate to tell you that. We have not financed the visa processing system for business visas, for fiancé visas, even for people that are married already. And so we are trying and have boosted up all of that funding, but this is an area that is significantly bogged down administratively and short-staffed. And to be honest with you, the funding of this area has gotten caught up in a larger debate over what our immigration policy should be, because there's people out there in Congress, they are people that I work with, that don't believe we should be giving too many more visas to anybody. So I'm just giving you the broader context. We'll try to get your answer for you, but I suspect that it's going to be, we're still processing it.
I understand.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Congressman Case.
Nice and close, please. Yeah, this microphone, you need to like get right on it.
All right, thanks for inviting us to speak. I want to say I heard your comments about gun violence, and I appreciate them, but I think we got to do more. My name is Matthew Hiru. I'm an owner of a registered weapon, a handgun. We're in the midst of a public health crisis. According to the CDC, there are 120 deaths by firearms every day. Gunshot wounds are the leading cause of death of Americans between 1 and 19. In the 104 days since January 1st, this year alone, there have been 155 mass shooting events in the United States. That includes 4 yesterday, 4 the day before. That comes out to more than 10 mass shootings a week. And the thing is, I don't need to make that announcement. We all know that. It's routinely reported. This sort of a violence began in the workplace, then it moved into the high schools, now it's in the grade schools. And I'm wondering, are we going to wait until it gets into our daycare centers and our nurseries before we start to act? The gun lobby likes to say that guns don't kill people, people kill people. If we follow that logic, we can say axes don't chop down trees, people chop down trees. But it's a heck of a lot easier if you can get your hands on an axe. And easier still if you have a chainsaw, which in the case of mass shootings is an AR-15. Across the U.S., there are many efforts by many states to strengthen gun laws and to tighten access. These efforts are aimed at mitigating the problems, but they have failed to address the root cause. Many want us to believe that mental illness is the root cause. I submit that the root cause is the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This vaguely worded, poorly crafted, single sentence of an amendment is the root cause of this current health crisis of gun violence. And there is precedent for amending amendments. The 18th Amendment repealed the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th Amendment. And I know the knee-jerk reaction to a proposal to amend the Second Amendment is that it is completely impossible. At one time, sailing west to reach the east was impossible. Flying in the air was impossible. Climbing Mount Everest was impossible. Yet bold men and women with determination and with grit achieved these things. Everest would never have been climbed without somebody putting his foot on the trail and taking that first step. So what I respectfully charge you, sir, is to take that first step.
Yeah.
I implore you to draft initial legislation and introduce onto the floor of the 118th Congress the 28th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, one that will amend the meaning, scope, and limitations of the Second Amendment. I urge you to do that before the end of the summer.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was very well presented, and I appreciate that. And I hope I conveyed to you that I that I am in full agreement with you on pretty much everything you said there. I think I'm rated 0% by the NRA, if I'm not mistaken, over my lifetime. So that ought to tell you a little bit about where I've been on guns. I haven't seen any significant proposals to amend the Second Amendment to the Constitution, and I think the reason for that, and it's not that we shouldn't go there, so I'm not shying away from the first step, but I am trying to get gun regulation passed through Congress. And I think it is possible to do that, especially with this incredible and horrific increase in violence. And so I don't want to get off track on this. I want to try to get the regulation that is permissible clearly under the Second Amendment as it stands today, because we can regulate everything that's in Congress right now is not going to violate the Second Amendment. And so we can pass this stuff. And so that's where my focus is going to be. I'll take a look at it, but I mean, I'm just telling you straight. It's going to be a lot harder to amend the Second Amendment than to actually achieve gun regulation at the federal level.
It will be hard, but it's something I think that will solve the problem. And if it takes decades, it'll take even longer if we don't start.
I got it. Thank you.
Aloha, Congressman Case.
Nice and close.
How's that? Testing? Aloha. Thank you for doing this town hall in person. It's nice to be in person again. My name's Brett Kershig. I live in Manoa Valley, longtime resident, grew up there, and wanted to thank you for saving the post office in Manoa. We really appreciate
once
that.
in a while, you actually achieve something in this job, and saving Manoa Post Office was one. And thanks for reminding me. I hadn't thought about that for a while. That was a good win.
No, but yeah, thank you very much for that, and for responding when I did use your website, which is a very good website, to bring your attention to the airplane noise flying over the valley, which seemed to have gotten a little better. So thank you. But I'm here to kind of bring to your attention some of the other things that are happening in the valley. A couple things. One is the Army Corps of Engineers is pursuing Alawai flooding remediation project, right?
Right.
And so I know our Manoa Neighborhood Board, I don't think there's a member of it here tonight, but I was in their meeting this month, and they did bring that up, and they passed a resolution to complain about the fact that even though invited several times, the Army Corps of Engineers to present to the neighborhood board, because one of their proposed solutions is potentially setting up a retention basin using the entirety of Manoa Valley Park. And there's some concerns and questions about that. And so anyway, anything your office can do to help us persuade the Army Corps to please present.
Cool. Let me just take that issue, and then we'll move on.
Okay, and then I have one other one just to bring up very briefly. There's another project in the valley that is called Manoa Banyan Court. It's and the reason I bring it up with your office, it's mainly as you know, council and a state, but mainly a council thing, is that the nonprofit we believe that is pursuing this as the quote unquote developer of this project is abusing the tax laws for nonprofits. Now, they're a 501c13 cemetery organization, and we believe that they're not using their funds appropriately to preserve the cemetery. They are instead trying to use their funds to pursue this development project. And on the side, last October, they applied for a 501c3, which is a 501c3 meant to be a Manoa Banyan Court Development Corporation nonprofit. We think that that's kind of a blatant abuse of the IRS law, so that's maybe an area that your office can help us with.
All right.
Thank you
so much. And it's good to talk with somebody from Manoa. I had 20 great years in Manoa, including 4 great years on the neighborhood board and 8 great years as your state representative. And I would not have been able to serve in the U.S. Congress without the training that I got, especially in constituent communications and community relations that I got in Manoa. So I've always been grateful for that. The Army Corps of Engineers and the flood control project. Let me give you 1 or 2 quick comments. I believe we need a flood control project in the Alawai watershed. I believe that we're ripe for a very, very difficult flood, and I think we've got to do it. And so to the people out there that say we don't need anything, I don't agree with that. However, I will say in the same breath that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been tone deaf on a number of fronts on this project for a while. And so I think the kind of step back by the Corps to ask the question, are we on the right track, and to come back with an alternative plan after the first one really received a lot of community opposition, was the right thing for the Corps. I think the Corps made a big mistake by sending out the request for comment on the EIS and then not telling anybody separately. I don't know why they're not coming to the neighborhood boards. I mean, it seems to me at this point they should be presenting their plan. So we can certainly ask them that question. The project you talk about, I really try hard not to get into the middle of state and local issues, to be honest. I mean, I've got my own thoughts on it, having come from Manoa, but I guess I'd have to think about whether it was the correct, proper use of my office to ask the question on somebody's 501c3 application. So let me take that one back and think about that. But good luck. Your state and local representative is right here. So
she's been very hard at work on that.
Maybe she can ask me to look into the tax implications of things, and then I will forward that along. Hi.
Hi, Senator Case. I thought my wife was
Representative, not senator. Don't make that mistake. Shots in Hirono don't like anybody to say that. Yeah, they flip out if I get called senator.
came that I'm concerned what happened at Bridge Hill. The spill of the fuel and also the spill of the fire retardant. What concerns me was the fire retardant, not just what's happened, but was there properly disposed of? There's a strict guideline regarding disposal of chemicals or pesticides. Another question, which only I think should be handled through the legislature in D.C., not here, because the level of problem originates from Washington, D.C. The CDC has a responsibility of fluoridating the entire community's water supply on the purpose of preventing cavities. There are strict guidelines as how it is applied and how it should be disposed of. One of the guidelines is that if it falls on the ground, you store it anyway, it cannot just wash it down. You can't let it go to the drain. That same fluoride is what they use to fluoridate the water. There have been years they've been trying to fluoridate water away. And it's originating from the CDC because they have the task of fluoridating the entire nation. I'd like to see what can be done to at least do some research to verify what fluoride is. I'm a chemist. I was a chemist, industrial chemist for 25 years. And I retired as a technical director for the Pacific region. And my experience, I used to train Navy personnel, civilian personnel, on the use of fluoride, the hazardous handling, everything. And because, what's spilled on the ground, they say it's dangerous, you have to dispose of it. Be sure that they dispose of it the proper way. But most of why does the CDC conflict with the exact thing that they're doing?
Okay.
Trying to fluoridate the water.
Okay. I'm sorry. So are you saying that you want fluoridation or don't want fluoridation?
I'm not against fluoride. I'm against fluoridation to put it in drinking water that everybody has to drink.
Right.
Because it has health effects.
Well, so I totally agree with you on Red Hill. I'm concerned about it too. I mean, I think we have answers to a fair bit, but we still don't have answers to a fair bit too on Red Hill. So we, for example, still don't have a very widely agreed conclusion about whether there continues to be, or to what extent there continues to be any contamination of our aquifer. As to the AFFF spill that you referred to, it seems that is contained. I went to that site last week. It seems that they have gotten up under it and around it, and you know, and this is not just the military talking, this is the people that are overseeing the military, so the EPA and the State Department of Health. But you know, hey, Red Hill has thrown us a lot of surprises, so I'm always vigilant about what I'm hearing on Red Hill, and I don't assume that because everybody agrees that it's necessarily what's going on. So we've made the decision here not to fluoridate our water, and we've had long debates about that over the years, and I don't think I believe in a national fluoridation requirement.
The CDC in their manual, they're responsible for fluoridating the entire nation.
Well, they're not.
What they're doing.
Yeah, I haven't actually taken a look at the CDC. I'm happy to look at whatever the materials or references are.
I don't have the time now.
But I can just tell you that as far as I know, Hawaii doesn't believe it's under any mandate from the CDC to fluoridate our water. So there must be something in there. Maybe it's an advisory by the CDC or a strong urging, or because there are definite consequences to not fluoridating our water. So we have some of the highest levels of tooth decay in the entire country because we don't fluoridate. But there's a downside to doing it too, and that's a judgment that we're making here.
Okay, I just want to be aware that someone at the CDC, EPA, follow the guidelines, which is issued for the entire nation. The water supply has a guideline for fluoride. There's more than 4 ppm in the drinking water. You cannot drink it.
Okay.
It's toxic. Yet CDC says it's safe. You can add it in. Two opposite things.
Okay. Well, let me take a look at what you've got, dig it into a little bit more. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, let me give this to you.
Okay.
It's just a picture of a spill on the main fluoride. So fluoride spill. Sidewalk.
Yeah. No. I mean, I get it.
It's a hazardous material, and it's trying to put it in drinking water.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Right up close?
Yep, nice and close.
Aloha, Congressman Case. I'm Michael Sukov. I'm one of your constituents in Makiki. We've had some communications, electronic and so forth. First of all, I want to say I really appreciate how much you're doing for the people of this district. I moved here not a whole long time ago, so I'm not familiar with the history, but from everything I'm hearing, you know, you really have the concerns of our community at heart. I'm going to bring something up. I don't know if you talked about it because I actually went to the wrong location, so I got here a half hour late.
Oh.
So I may have missed points, areas 1 and 2. But what I'd like you to do...
You can come to Kapolei tomorrow and get the first half an hour.
Unfortunately, I don't have a car. It's kind of hard for me to get out.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm wondering what you... I mean, I understand from what I've looked at online and so forth, that you've been largely supportive of the billions of dollars that have gone to fund the war in Ukraine. I don't know if I'm wrong about that, but...
You're not wrong.
Okay. So I'm wondering, given the disclosures the last few days by this Air National Guard leaker, which some of the documents are revealing that U.S. personnel are actually military on the ground in Ukraine fighting the Russians. I'm wondering if you would be willing to reconsider your position on funding this endless war. And the other thing I want to add to that is U.S. taxpayer dollars, all our money is going to fund these wars, these adventures abroad. And meanwhile, our government at different levels is arguing we don't have the money to fund basic social services, healthcare, food. So I'd just like you to address that discrepancy. Sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Michael. Well, first of all, I have not been able to get back to DC and in both a classified and an unclassified environment, understand exactly what happened with that leak or what actually was leaked. And my responsibilities on the Appropriations Defense Subcommittee include not just defense, but the entirety of the intelligence community. Mm. And so I'm going to be pretty deep into this once I get back to DC. So I don't know the answers that are out there. There's a ton of questions right now. That's number
Yeah.
one. Let me just keep going. Okay. I believe the stakes are very high in Ukraine. And I believe that Ukraine is not just about Ukraine. I believe it is about many situations in the world. I would quote you China, for example. I would quote you a number of other. I mean, if Russia can decide on its own, in violation of all international rules, international norms, to invade a sovereign country, fellow country in the world, and do it with impunity and get away with it, that's not going to be good for the world. It's not good for Ukraine, and it's not going to be good for the world. And so I'm not supporting an endless expenditure of money in Ukraine, but I am supporting what I think we need to be doing at this point. And we have invested a lot of our own money in the effort in Ukraine, somewhere in the range of $75 to $100 billion. By the way, against a budget, total budget of somewhere around 1.4 billion, of which about 800, about half of that is defense intelligence and half of that is non-defense. So I don't believe that what we have necessarily had to invest in Ukraine to date has come at the expense of our non-defense services. And so I don't buy that it's a mutually exclusive situation. And I will say this to you. I think we've got a big issue in our country over the overall allocation of our national budget to defense versus non-defense. And that's a debate we're having right now in Congress. And it's wrapped into the debt and deficit debate because we're borrowing a lot of this money to kind of skate by and have our cake and eat it too. We're avoiding tough choices in all of these areas, and we need to be doing that to facing that music. But on Ukraine, I'm going to go back and try to figure out exactly what happened. But no, it has not changed my basic conclusion that we, in conjunction with the rest of the world, have to make sure that Russia does not succeed in Ukraine for a lot of different reasons.
I respect your opinion. I would just say that what you are saying that the Russians have been doing, the United States has done on many, many occasions.
I'm not going to disagree with you that we've made our own mistakes over the last 3 generations. So we're not pure, but we're talking Ukraine here.
Hi, Mr. Caseno. Sorry. My name is Mira Leonard, and I recently purchased a condo about a year ago here in Hawaii. The apartment and the entire property has been non-smoking for over 10 years. At 2, 3, 5 o'clock in the morning, almost every morning, I'm woken up to cigarette smoke inside of my apartment. I've done everything you can possibly imagine to remedy the issue for myself, also for other people. I've talked to the American Lung Association, my local representatives, I've talked to lawyers, I've talked to the association, of course, and there's basically, they don't either want to do things or they can't do things, mainly because it's very difficult to actually enforce the rules. Actually, it's almost impossible, really, because there's no way to catch people. There is a very simple fix to all of this. There are companies who have developed cigarette smoke detectors that literally detect cigarette smoke that are inexpensive, can easily be installed into units, and the same thing with just like regular smoke detectors. Problem is that there's no precedence and there's no right for the association lawyers won't actually install them. So I'm asking for your help or what you could possibly help, because I'm a pilot and not being able to have enough sleep at night is detrimental not only to me, but to my crew, of course. There are people who have cancer who are literally being exposed to secondhand cigarette smoke 6 times a night, as well as kids. And of course, there's about 40,000 people who die every year of secondhand cigarette smoke, I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I think you should be able to enforce a no smoking prohibition in your condo. That's a starter. Second, just listening to you talk as kind of both a public servant and a lawyer by training, I would consider some kind of action against whoever is causing that smoke, because they are...
You can't prove it.
Huh?
You can't prove it. That's the problem.
Okay, well, you have to find a way to demonstrate a track to the smoke. There must be some way to actually.
The
Do you know who it is?
There's several people. That's the problem.
Okay.
So can't decide.
I think you also have a fair number of claims that you can make against your board of directors. Not to get you going, but that's what I'd be thinking about as a lawyer, because the board of directors is charged with enforcing the condo rules. And so I think they're skating. I don't know who they are, or I don't know anything other than what you told me. I'm just telling you what would go through my head if you were sitting in my office and I was like, well, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? I don't know what you haven't done at this point. So maybe the best thing to do is to catch you offline and see whether we can. Have you gone to the ombudsman, for example, the condo ombudsman? There is an ombudsman that tries to referee condo disputes. And so I don't know if you've been there yet.
I've talked with them.
Okay. You should go to your city council members and your state, especially your state legislators, because they create the condo laws, the state level, and they ought to know what's going on, and perhaps they can give you some guidance. But we're happy to try it. It's not a federal issue, but it is something that we possibly can help you with. And I certainly hope you get some sleep, because I fly you a lot. But.
Hello, my name is Paul Scott, and Congressman, I bring you great greetings from the state of South Carolina, and I've worked with Congressman Jim Clyburn, who was Majority Whip for about 18 years. Over the last 2 years, I've been working with the Department of Defense out of Hickam base here, and I fell in love with Hawaii, so I am now resident of Hawaii.
Welcome.
Wife, thank you. My wife, we've known each other for 20 years. I invited her to Hawaii 2 years ago. We got married on my birthday, August of this past year.
Oh, aloha. I forgot. I didn't realize you were here.
So this is my first political outing here. I've studied your history. I like what you've done for the great state of Hawaii. We're now citizens of Hawaii, and we look to support you and help you in helping the great state of Hawaii. Paul Scott.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow. That's easily the nicest question of the entire evening. Please come to my future talk stories. Hi.
I'm here to bring you down. All right.
You're not going to do the same thing as Paul?
No. I have something for you or for your problem-solving caucus.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though my hair is snow white, I'm actually 60. Okay. And I'm a FERS annuitant. And after last year's 7-8% inflation, I was shocked and disgusted to find out because I am not 62, I don't get a cost of living adjustment until I'm 62. So I have to wait 2 more years after, I joined the Air Force when I was 18. I did 5 years. Then I worked at the shipyard.
I'm sorry, one thing I missed in your question was cost of living adjustment to what?
FERS annuity.
FERS, okay,
FERS.
federal employees.
Yes.
So you're a federal employee.
Former. I'm retired.
Right, correct. But you work for the, okay, I
Yes.
got you.
And I retired from Pearl Harbor.
All right.
So, but I'm not an engineer and I'm not in the trade, so I'm not loaded with dough. I'm single, but I just turned 60 and now I'm finding I have to wait 2 more years before I'll get a COLA. And with inflation and cost of living going up, I was wondering if you guys could please consider parity with FERS annuitants. Because I retired under regular retirement. I did not take an early retirement. And so parity so that we're all treated the same. Or if maybe you could waive our federal taxes, which I know will never happen, until we turn 62.
Are you, my first question is, yes, I'd be willing to look at it, but my very first question is, who told you that you...
I brought you the paper. This is from the first handbook that I printed.
But have you actually gone and asked them?
It says only the exceptions are air traffic controllers, law enforcement, federal fire, disability, or partial CSRS.
Okay. I think what we should do is,
Make an appointment?
no, just, you don't have to make an appointment. You can just talk to my staff and ask them to look into this to you, and we can contact you after this, because the first thing I'd like to do is make sure you have the right information.
Okay.
It's not ringing true to me, and so I'd like to check your basic facts first, and before we decide what, if anything, can be changed. Okay?
All right.
All right,
I'll give it
so
to you. I printed it right here.
I don't know where any of my staff is. Oh, there they are.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're just about up, so if you could flash question and I'll flash answer you.
Okay, you'll probably remember this. I stood in this same spot 3 years ago, and I made the rather provocative statement that the biggest threat to the country wasn't China or Russia or North Korea or Iran, but rather our own Congress and its inability to control spending. The national debt back then stood at $23 trillion. You referred me to your website where there was a video which expressed your concern over the national debt. Well, here we are 3 years later, and the national debt is now $31.5 trillion. And let's put this in perspective. That's $380,000 for the average family. The average.
Wait, that's all right. Just go ahead, sir. Just finish up. I'm happy to answer your question. You want me to answer you on the national debt?
Well, now we have Biden wanting to spend $6.9 trillion for an annual budget, whereas in 2019, we were spending $4.4 trillion.
Right.
Pulling in only $3.4 trillion in revenue, hence a $1 trillion deficit. In order to fund a $6.9 trillion budget without increasing the deficit, we'd have to double revenues from 2019.
Right. Okay.
Double.
I know what the problem is. I'm just trying to get to an answer to your question, which I...
Well, okay. Over the last 3 years, the government has spent roughly $17 trillion. How much of that did you vote against?
I voted for most of it because it was COVID-19 relief funding, and I needed to try, which was all borrowed, and I agree with you. There was an incredible consequence to the deficit and the debt from that.
Inflation?
In addition, to a deficit. But the primary reason for the deterioration in our federal government over the last 3 years is $6 to $7 trillion of borrowed COVID-19 relief funding across the board, which I think we needed to do. And I wish,
a lot of fraud involved as well.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with all of what you're saying. I agree with your concern over the deficit and the debt. And I have introduced legislation, which I'm trying to advance, and actually I think we have a pretty good chance. We are in the middle of debating the deficit and the debt ceiling for the first time in years and years and years of actually physically, realistically debating it. So, sometimes you got to get to a debate before you can solve it. People have been sweeping their, sweeping this under the rug for a long time, especially the last 3 years.
Do we need to spend $2.5 trillion more than we did in 2019 now that the pandemic is behind us?
We don't have a deficit of 2.5 trillion annually right now.
No, not a deficit. In 2019, the government spent $4.4 trillion.
It's like you have
Biden wants a budget of $6.9 trillion.
Okay, let me answer you. It's hard to turn an ocean liner in a very short period of time. That's my answer to you. Is your solution to return spending to FY17 levels?
I think we need to make some tough choices. We need to decide between what we need and what's nice to have.
I think we need to make some tough choices too. I don't think we can afford to accelerate spending indefinitely. I never supported the tax cuts by the prior president because they were revenue. They took away revenue at a time when we needed revenue unfairly, I thought. So I'm ready to do those tough decisions. I'm ready to say we can't continue those tax cuts anymore, and we can't continue, endless spending at this level.
And because of the increase in interest rates, how much are we spending now on servicing the debt?
$400 billion.
$400 billion that we could be spending on other things,
Right.
but instead we're spending it on people who have enough money to loan it to the federal government.
Right.
And so the rich are
Okay.
basically getting
All right.
richer.
Well,
as recently as a month ago, I bonds from 2001 were earning 13% interest from the federal government.
I appreciate your comment, your concern. I heard you 3 years ago. I still hear you. I have tried in my own way to find my fellow friends and travelers that believe in this. We have introduced legislation that would get after the deficit and the debt through a fiscal commission and otherwise, and I think that's the way we have to pursue it. It's called the Sustainable Budget Act. My co-sponsor is Steve Womack, a Republican from Arkansas, so it's a bipartisan, and we have a counterpart measure in the Senate. So it is a start on a problem that I agree with you on. Okay? Thank you. Okay, we are after 8 o'clock, and but I'm happy to just, if you could kindly keep them short, and I'll try to respond.
This is very easy. President Biden and I rarely agree on anything, but I fully support his efforts in Ukraine. I think that is the right thing to do. Russia is the enemy in this case. The question I have for you, though, sir, is I am intrigued by your caucus, that you are the problem solvers. The problem solver question that I think is on everyone's mind is Social Security. Is this something that you or your caucus has come up with? Because I'm worried this is not going to get solved by Congress.
I agree with you. I have introduced legislation comparable to what I just talked with that gentleman about, which is to try to, because I have given up on Congress's ability to actually return Social Security and Medicare to a sustainable path myself, at least in the short term. And so I believe what we need to do is to get it out of Congress for a period of time into a number of people that are on a bipartisan, bicameral, not a locked in any particular solution basis, and come back to Congress with a solution, and we got to vote yes or no on it. I think that's what, and I've introduced that legislation. So, and it's an increasingly difficult issue to talk about because there's a lot of people out there that are pretending that Social Security, A, doesn't have any problem at all, and B, they're busy demonizing anybody that tries to talk about it, and that's not any way to solve a problem. So anyway, yes, I am personally involved in that, and my problem solvers are involved in it also.
Is there such a caucus in the Senate?
It's not a formal caucus, but they informally they have a version of the problem solvers because they have a mixing ground of R's and D's that do try to solve issues. They don't call it a caucus, but they are our counterpart over there. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm a constituent. I live in Manoa Valley, the lower part. But my problem is probably considerably minor, but you're on the committee of the natural resources.
Closer to the mic, please.
You're on the committee of natural resources?
Correct.
Okay, good. So I got this petition from the Native American tribes, and I want to encourage you to support their water rights. Okay?
Okay.
You know about that?
Yeah, I do. Can I just take a look?
Okay.
So we've had legislation on this issue in natural resources, and I have supported that legislation.
Okay.
Okay?
So, it's not only us at Red Hill, but the entire island of Oahu is facing this problem with clean water because of that aquifer that's been contaminated. So here's my solution temporary, that if they're still using that fuel from those tanks on Red Hill, that they put them in tankers.
We're going to put them in tankers and ship it out.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Thank you so much. That's our plan. We need tankers to get the Red Hill fuel out of the state.
Hi, I'm Edwin Figueroa. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, and I have two issues. We're not going to solve any problems here, but one has to do with the VA, they do a lot of good work in some areas, and other areas they're real atrocious. So just jot down my number so you could call me back, and I could give you a lot of examples. And maybe, if possible, to have one of your staff members go through a couple of phone calls, like a 3-way call, to to see what kind of problems you encounter just making regular appointments.
No, we want to help you with your behavior.
Right, that's one issue. The other one is more important because it has to do with disabled people in wheelchairs. I have a good friend that's in a wheelchair, and she has an issue with finding a place. And these are all disability buildings, for senior citizens, where she could roll into a shower to take a shower. They don't have enough built. When they build the buildings, there's no requirement, supposedly, for them to make so many bathrooms with roll-in showers for people in wheelchairs that cannot, they need assistance. So we need either funding, and I don't know if it's part of it, if it's already built in there, and as far as that they have to do it, but you cannot find them. People are on waiting lists for years, and they can't get it. Yet you could look on television and find these places like they could redo your bathroom and take the bathtub out and put a 1-inch little walk-in shower, whatever.
So there are requirements in projects to construct a certain number of units to accommodate people with disabilities. That's federal law and state law.
Right.
And by the way, those requirements are not sufficient to the need. So that's number one. Number two, we do fund from the federal government to support not only those laws in Hawaii, but also to support the enforcement of those laws.
Okay.
And so have you been to the where's my staff? The Disability Rights Center?
No, I have not.
We will put you in touch with the Disability Rights Center.
Good.
Because it sounds like is it your wife or your brother?
No, it's a friend.
Friend,
She's
okay.
actually here. The problem is that there's many people, but of course I'm rooting for my friend.
I understand that. I think what I'm trying to do is to tell you that we are trying to work for the many people, but maybe we can try to help your friend's specific problem. Okay. So if my staff somewhere, somebody could,
my numbers.
Can you get with them? Okay, thanks. Okay, guys, quick.
Aloha. My name is Joshua. Just a very simple one question. What is updated status for COVID origin research in Congress?
COVID-related research?
COVID research origin.
Research. COVID research.
Yeah, COVID origin right now, we find in the COVID, this kind of virus, where it is from, the origin. Yeah. I just want to know what is up status in Congress.
Well, we are still trying to find out what the origins of the virus were. And we are having a lot of trouble. It clearly did originate in China.
Yes.
China has clearly not been cooperative in trying to find the origins, and so we're having to do that research in ways that don't involve the cooperation of the government of China. But we are still trying to research and identify the origins of COVID. Yes, we're funding that, and we are going to try to answer it. And by the way, this is not about politics, and it shouldn't be a political question. It is used as a political football. But we need to know where it came from for scientific purposes, for prevention purposes, and for future action purposes. And so we're doing that.
Yeah, okay? I think only one reason can ask the responsibility. Because when Wuhan happened, they sent a lot of people out. So that's only for this reason we can ask them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the reason. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, just a quick question. Just a couple minutes. I was a cab driver, then an Uber driver, and I had a series of stroke and 2 brain seizures. But now I can't drive, and the unemployment office will not give me any unemployment because I'm an independent contractor. So now the Social Security office, I applied for Social Security, they're taking a long time to process my disability claim. So I don't have any income, but I've got to wait a long time. It looks like it's going to be a year and a half before I get any permanent decision. And so I'm stuck without any income coming in because I don't have an employment. And I was not working a regular job. I was a cab driver. So could you help me to...
We'll do a couple of things. First of all, we'll try to help you with, I don't know whether there's other alternatives for you to get unemployment, not just unemployment, but temporary assistance in your situation, number one. Number two, we can ask about the status of your disability claim. A year and a half, that's too long.
Yeah, so far I've waited 9 months, and then they said, well,
let us go out there and try to answer that for you, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for and thank you for all of you that stayed till the bitter end. We had a great group here tonight, and all of you that stayed and listened to all of it, I appreciate it. A great talk story. I learned a lot, and I hope you took something away from it. Please stay in touch. Mahalo. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I can ask you a question, just a general thing, just in case you want to ask. Give me a homeless, like, what do you call it, federal government whole thing. You mentioned it, anyway, not that somebody else is like, yeah, that's like,
Yeah, if you can.
It's a very complex problem.
I'm Jeremy. I'm part of the Pacific Islands which is part of the East Coast Islands. So we have an event coming up. Touch base with Representatives Washington DC, but we also want to have a big one. Okay. But just to have a representative, I know it's busy, but it just means that it's fun. It's the Cyber Recognition Festival, so it's the other communities, Micronesia, Marshall Islands, Palau, all these different cultures. Aloha.